Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone back to the Economic Development meeting this afternoon on the 15th of September. Just remember that we are recording this meeting and it is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Under level 2, it is compulsory for us to wear masks, and I will ask councillors to identify themselves if they are speaking, and I can identify people if they're on. They're at home, so we can then identify them if they are speaking, but if you are, can you please identify yourself as well? Thank you. First off, we will ask for additional notification of any additional items. No, we've got no notification of additional items. The second point is to declarations of interest. Have anybody got any declarations of interest? No. We'll move to the next item, which is public comment. There's no public comment, so we'll move to item number 5, which is the presentation from CEDA. So we've got David Wright online, so we'll move to you, David. When you're ready, we'll ask you to do your presentation, which you've got 10 minutes to do. So we'll ask you, David, to do your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harpeth. And can you all hear me clearly before I continue?
Yes, we can, David.
Wonderful. No, thank you very much. So, look, thanks for the opportunity to update you today. What I thought I would touch on in the 10 minutes available is just 4 of our key work streams and driving economic development specifically, and just touch on some of the feedback we're getting on business sentiment. And I'm sure Amanda will add to that when she comes to her update from the Chamber's perspective. Now, I do have a presentation there, which, right, if we go to the second slide. Okay, so firstly, I just want to touch on the Central New Zealand Distribution Hub, which has been a major piece of work that CEDA has been involved in, working with the PNCC through the year. It is complete now, and it certainly positions our region and national transport and logistics as one of 3 key distribution hubs in the country, the other 2 being Ruakura and Christchurch. From feedback we've received as we've developed the strategy, private investors in property development, transport and logistics all see significant investment opportunities. And now we're at the stage of working with central government, iwi and local government to realise those opportunities that have been identified. One of the next stages is for the city to in fact develop its master plan, and that will inform the district plan changes and designations, which will in effect give effect to some of that, to allow that future development of infrastructure and investment. And in turn, CEDA will be supporting this through accelerating some of the inward investment opportunities. We can turn to the food strategy. This is the major strategy piece of work about to be launched this year. Food and fibre is accounting for something like 7% of GDP across the region, as well as employment, plus there's additional contribution coming from provision of scientific and technical services. As I've mentioned, we're about to commence our development of a food strategy, which will parallel the process we followed with the distribution hub strategy, and that will guide investment and economic development. It will recognise the region's competitive advantage arising from having a world-class hub in food science located here. And so the challenge now is to realise those opportunities to leverage that competitive advantage. Our expectation is by the end of March, we will have a draft, stage 1 complete, and a draft strategy ready for wider consultation. If we could turn to the next slide around business and investment. And just to make a few comments around business sentiment, and as I said, I'm sure Amanda will make a lot more when she comes on. I think we would sum it up by saying, from our contact to our business advisors, that the region's business community has been largely calm and cautiously optimistic. We did reactivate our COVID-19 support hub, to answer any questions and provide links to key information such as wage subsidy, resurgence support payments and so on. But it would seem that businesses have been better prepared through these restrictions, knew where to go to for support in a way that wasn't quite as frantic as I understand a year ago was. That said, there's obviously been an impact, is continuing impact on businesses, particularly those dependent on the Auckland market. For example, visitation, hospitality, and in common with if most of the rest of the country, increasing supply chain shortages, cost increases, as well as increasing workforce shortages. With respect to business retention, expansion and attraction, CEDA is focusing on two key areas: distribution and logistics, food and agribusiness. And that is then arising out of those two strategies that I've referred to earlier, that are one developed and the other being developed. And just to finish on this slide, a couple of examples of inward investment. The Australian Defence Apparel is relocating here from Auckland in January. There's a very good example of a company that is realising the benefits of the location plus the distribution, access to distribution from here. And the other one, just to mention by way of example, is Haringa Energy. They are building a national hydrogen refuelling network, and one of their first locations will be here for the hydrogen production and refuelling outlet adjoining, as I understand it, Railway Road Settlers Line. But again, just building on the opportunities that are now being realised around this as a distribution hub. The final slide, if I can have that, please, is just looking at profiling the city and region. And why have I brought this up in terms of economic development? That is because it is a critical enabler of economic development, be it visitors, investors, talent and businesses. It's obviously a key element of what CEDA continues to do. Specifically, we're launching a significant targeted campaign to attract talent in the infrastructure and construction sectors, highlighting the job and lifestyle advantages here. So that campaign will go live very shortly. We're also supporting a number of other initiatives covering talent and skills attraction to support local businesses, it being one of the key issues and problems that this region, along with a lot of others, have at the moment. We're launching the new and refreshed regional website at the end of the month. It's going to be a key tool in our marketing work to attract talent, business investment and visitation by building on the profile of the city and the region. And in that note, we hope to give you a flavour of this at the Regional Identity Showcase, which you are invited to. It's on the 29th of September here at CEDA. So we hope to see you all here. So look, thanks for that time today. I hope that I've been able to give you just a quick picture, some key economic that we have underway. Thank you, Chairperson.
David, thank you for that. Are you able to take some questions?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So just one question from me. You talked about some COVID support that CEDA was offering. Can you give us a bit more specifics about that COVID support?
My apologies for the confusion there. It's giving the links to the government's COVID support. So it's providing easy links for those that are wanting to access the government support measures, central government support measures.
So last time I know there was some coaching offered and mentoring offered. Is that not been offered this time round?
I think it's still there, but I think the point I made was that everyone seemingly is better prepared this time, having regrettably been through it once before. So there seemed to be a high awareness, at least from our perspective, of what support was there.
Okay, thanks for that. Does anybody else want to ask David any questions? Councillor Beattie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, David. David, you mentioned a talent attraction campaign. Could you expand a bit on what that might look like, please?
Absolutely. It's targeted at the construction and infrastructure sector. It's targeted, obviously, to attract skills into the region. It will be linked to some recognition from those responding to it. I haven't got the full details of the channels that will be going through, but the intent obviously is to locate talent outside of the region and attract them through putting them in touch with employers within the region.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further questions of David? Oh, sorry, Councillor Dennison.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora. Kia ora, David. Just in regards to your website, regional website launch, is that part going to include the new regional branding that you've been working on alongside
Yes,
that, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. So that's the public launches that were.
So what's the plan intended to launch that? Is it going to be an event or is that just an online?
No, it's a physical event. COVID status is willing, which will be here at the Cedar office the 29th of September. We have invited you also, and I know that the team will be following up, but it is a physical event here at the Cedar office.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I've just got one other follow-up question. The project that you talked about in terms of hydrogen, who are you doing that project in partnership with?
The company is Haringa, Hiringa, Haringa Energy. They are establishing a national presence, and as I indicated to you, that one of the first production and refueling centres will in fact be located here. So the intent obviously is over time, when large transport fleets, the option will be to convert to hydrogen as a way of reducing dependence on diesel and emissions. But I think the key point there is an entity coming into the region, recognising the advantages of the distribution hub and the work that's been done in that area.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, David, for the presentation. Question just leads on from where Madam Chair was at around Haringa and the hydrogen refueling. The flip side of that is making sure there's people to buy the hydrogen. And just wondering what CEDA's role is around identifying local users and local offtakes for a hydrogen refueling centre here in the Manawatu.
Once it's established, which I understand will be May 2022, then that's something we would obviously be looking to link back to the company to see what support we can offer. I know, for example, that Haringa already reaching out to Horizons around the potential of the bus fleet, and that's again something that we're working to facilitate those discussions between the company and the regional council.
So just to clarify then, until it's open, there's no sort of upfront effort from CEDA to help acquire advanced customers?
There is no reason why we couldn't. We are certainly in touch with them, and yeah, very good point, and one we can obviously follow up with them to promote the potential.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, acknowledging that if Haringa is not coming to you for that request, that's possibly part of the story there. So thank you, and back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I don't seem to have any questions. No other questions online? Nope, there's no further questions. Thank you, David, and thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll look to move the recommendation that we receive the presentation for information, seconded by Councillor Dennison. We'll look to vote. Is there anyone that would like to make any comment? I'd just like to first just make one little comment, and that is to say thank you to CEDA for the work that they do in the space of supporting businesses in this environment of COVID. I know that businesses do appreciate that the work that CEDA do for supporting them in this environment. So thank you very much, David, to you and your team for that support.
Thank you.
We'll look to vote. So there's no any other comments? So we'll look to vote. So we'll look with a show of hands. All those in favour? Anyone against? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll look to the next presentation, which is a presentation from Amanda from the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Amanda. You've got 10 minutes, Amanda.
Good afternoon. Nice to see everybody again. I've got some slides, if they can be put up, please, so that we can talk to those. But just to sort of say that the first two slides I'm going to whiz through pretty quickly. It's just really a little bit of an overview, refresher of the Chamber of Commerce, what we are and what we do. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been doing very recently through the support through COVID. So, I mean, you can all read that what's up there. We are independent. We're funded by our members and our sponsors. We are one of 31 chambers across the country. And I guess that's where the significance of the business chambers of coming in is that we are part of a much bigger voice as well. So whilst we represent our city, our district, our region, we're also able to input into a bigger picture with central government as well. So I'll talk to you a little bit about that as well as we go through the presentation. So we do have a significant amount of businesses that make up a large part of the GDP of the region who are part of the Chamber of Commerce. And so if we could flip to the next slide, please. Most of you are aware of what our sort of business as usual type of functions are. And again, they're listed there. And we do quite a lot of advocacy. This year, last year, we've been advocating on behalf of the business community on things such as the local alcohol policy, nature calls, parking, which has obviously been one that's reappears every now and again. And we also do sit on a number of advisory boards across the region to make sure that the business community's voice is not only heard, but we hear what's going on. So it's two-way communication. And as David said earlier, we do work with CEDA on a number of projects. So, for example, we've given feedback on the food and fibre strategy and also the construction and infrastructure strategy as well. So we're making sure that the businesses are actually on the page with that. And also, for example, with Defence Hub, David also mentioned the Australian Defence Apparel that are coming here next year, and they've already joined the Chamber. We've already had connection with them through the Defence Hub and made sure that they've reached out and we've reached back to them as well. So we're in communication with them. If we could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so again, I have to really reaffirm what David said about with the business community this time around. Things were very different. Like last time, we had a lot of people that were making calls on us. They just didn't know what to do. But this time around, it was much more a case of directing people to the correct websites of where to get the information. The problem was that information was changing so quickly. So for us, although we've got a very good understanding of it, it has changed very quickly, quite significantly this time around. So the best thing was all of us that were giving out information was be directing people to the same place to have that access to the information. So for us, our focus became much more, we were there to help if there were any individual requirements that were needed, if people needed to talk to us. But our main focus was on things that were more positive in some respects. So what could we do at level 4? How could we support the businesses? How could we let people know what was open, what they were doing? And we've worked on that as we've come down through the levels. We've worked with Massey. We actually ran a business competition with Massey during lockdown as well, where we had students working on real life problems for the businesses. And that was, quite an interesting initiative. So it was very much more about the positives. Collectively, the chambers worked together and we sent out a survey, which is what I'm going to talk to in a minute. But we sent out a survey, which we actually did over 24 hours. It was a snapshot of 70 businesses from over 20 industries over a 24-hour collection period, whilst we were in level 4, to find out exactly what was happening and what the impact was on those businesses. And we did it, as did probably about 20 other chambers around the country. And from that, we were able to work out what the main problems were, and we were able then, a petition was put together with it, ended up with over 60,000 signatures. And collectively, the chambers, through a Zoom call like this, we presented it to Minister Nash and said, we were looking for weekly resurgence payments. These were the things that were needed. And because it was a big group of people representing a large number of businesses, and our region was represented there as well, we were able to, as everyone knows, on Friday, there were announcements made around resurgence payments again. So if we go to the next slide, please. This is the survey that we did. It was actually only 7 slides. of which 5 of them I'm going to show you. 2 of them, one was about demographic, and we were capturing really the size of the business rather than the industry type. And the other question was more a qualitative type of question, which obviously is people's private responses. But these were put together by all of the chambers collectively, so we didn't have much leeway of what we wanted to change. But I did actually capture our business industries in our survey, because I added it into the last question around comment, which was good for us because it was able to inform what sort of businesses were responding. And indeed, we were making sure we did have it. We wanted that to be representative. So the first slide you're looking at, it was is your business going to be able to continue, to operate through level 4? And surprisingly for us in our region, there were a lot of businesses that were able to. And I think a lot of the reason for that was that there were a lot of businesses in Manawatu are able to work from home to some degree. So to some degree or another, 65% of our businesses during level 4 were able to continue in one form or the other. I mean, that doesn't negate that you've then got sort of 35% that aren't, and it's those as well that we have to pay attention to. But able to sort of compare these with some of the other areas around the country was quite interesting for us. The next question, with the next slide, please, is to do with the confidence that your business was able to survive after level 4. And again, you can see from that 84% said that yes, and our regional economy was pretty resilient. And you could compare that to somewhere like Taupo, you can turn that the other way around. They're basically saying 84% of the businesses aren't confident that they're going to be able to survive. So that's what we were looking at from that one. And then with the next slide, please. This was to do with making staff redundant. And as you can see from that slide, nobody actually ticked yes, which was really, really encouraging. And the ones that said other, or sort of there was some other, it was about making shortening hours or potentially having less casuals, that sort of thing. But we also found, and again back to David's presentation, people were just actually trying to hang on to their staff. Nobody wants to lose them because they're not going to get them back. So that was actually quite a critical point that we were hearing from them. And the next slide, please. Okay, so this one, we were just, again, trying to get an estimate of who was and who wasn't accessing government support. So there you can see 66% of the businesses are actually accessing government support. And again, this was quite representative around the country, other than Waikato, whose primary industry seemed to be holding them up a lot more. And a lot of the businesses up there weren't actually accessing the government support at this stage. And the next question, which is to do with the financial impact of COVID-19. And as we can see, again, the way that these were grouped was done as a collective from around the country. But a lot of our businesses, although they're confident they're going to survive, they're not laying off staff, they are suffering. There's some quite significant losses that have been made over this was actually just over a period of a week. So 62% have made some loss up to 100k, and some of them were pretty close to there. And then again, there was like collectively over 500k. There's another 10% in 1 week that they're losing. And on to the next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of the future, what are we doing? And we're concerned about the businesses that have got issues going on at the moment. So again, those resurgence payments coming through to them is some way to alleviate that. But people do tend to be fairly upbeat at the moment. But there is a resilient economy, and the businesses hopefully will bounce back the same way as they did. We've worked collectively again with other organisations and come back with the Choose Manawatu. So we're looking at more about the digital opportunities, making sure that if we do go into lockdowns, that businesses can quickly adapt and be more agile. And that was one of the messages that we, as I said, we were doing. We were looking at the positives all the way through. What can we do? What's the best thing to do? In terms of sort of challenges, that skills shortage is a major problem. And again, we're working with quite a number of other organisations. People just haven't got the number of staff that they actually they actually need at the moment. Labour is a big problem, but I think we're all aware of that. But it's what do we do about it, because it's a national problem as well, and how do we attract what we need here. The C word. So that's talking, it is, and I might make no apology really for using it, but it is about collaboration and genuine collaboration, and not just for the sake of it. We really all do need to not be working in silos and working together. So right across our different agencies, and that's something that that comes up every time, I think, with the Chamber. We're just trying to make sure people do work together. And for us, you know, it is our business as usual in an unusual world. As making sure that we're there to support the businesses and whatever that looks like for them, and working closely with the other chambers as well, because you know, it's a significant network, the chamber network, and the regions are pushing back quite hard in terms of our representation as well. And we're being recognised, and Manawatu are up there with all the other regions pushing our weight as well, up our weight, and making sure that our region's heard, and making sure that central government, whilst we know that we're working collectively as regions, we all have different needs as well. So they're doing that for Manawatu. That's probably it for now. The last slide is just a recognition of some of our sponsors. So like I said, we're funded by members, supported by these people.
Thanks, Amanda.
Sorry, that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour there.
No, it was very thorough and very good to see. So I'll just ask around the room if there's any questions that we've got to see if anybody's got. So we'll start off with Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, Amanda. I think you probably just about covered off this the query I've got. Just in terms of the survey results around redundancies this time around, this lockdown, what's the comparison with the previous lockdown in terms of redundancies? And what role has the skills shortage actually played in that?
In terms of redundancies, I don't think that we saw significant in our region at all either. I don't know what percentages are at all. We didn't have any major notifications through to us, and indeed when we set up the local talent portal was actually done through Norwoods, Fonterra and Plumbing World, we really didn't get any responses through that for people who had been made redundant who needed support. So invariably there were some, but there was nothing actually major that came out at that time. And sorry, could you just repeat the second part of that question?
Yeah, just really around sort of any comparison with the previous lockdown, and has the skills shortage actually played any part in any differences that might be indicated?
The skill shortage just comes out everybody you speak with, and so people aren't likely, or they're less likely to make redundancies because they're not going to replace people if they do. When you get the turnaround. And just before we went into level 4, we had even hospitality. Some of the businesses were setting up their own programs to try to attract staff into their businesses. It's hard on them now because they've got the issues that they have got, especially at level 2 plus. So, but no, if anything, skill shortages have probably made sure that there were less redundancies than there might have been.
Amanda, you talked about a competition that Massey ran for you. What was the purpose of that competition?
It was one that Massey wanted to do. So they came to us before the lockdown, in fact, but they wanted to run a programme where students were able to have better access to work with businesses in a real life environment. So we went out to some businesses. We ended up with 4 that we were working with that had opportunities or difficulties or things that have been thrown up through COVID, and they were matched with students who were then able to, it was like having a fresh lens on a problem. And the winner of the competition was the student who was working on the New Zealand Rugby Museum project. Because with New Zealand Rugby Museum, 85% of their visitors had previously been international, so they've got a huge loss there. And how do you reinvent yourself, and what can you do? So it was that sort of thing that we were working on with them, and we ended up doing it totally remotely because that was the only way we could do it. But it was good that we could still do it, and that's what I guess is our message is, although you might have to postpone some things, we can't do our After 5 events, but there's ways you can do things. Don't stop doing them. Learn how to do it differently, and then sort of, I guess we practice what we preach in that respect.
Okay, thank you. Don't think we have any other questions. No questions online. So look, that looks it. So thanks very much, Amanda. We'll look to receive the report. So the recommendation is that we'll look to receive the report that has been put forward and seconded by Councillor Dennison. Any comments from anyone? I'd just like to say well done to the Chamber for putting that survey up. I think that the survey results were very good, and it's interesting to get that information, particularly through that time. So thank you very much, Amanda. We'll look to vote all those in favour with a show of hands. Thank you, and online, and that's carried unanimously. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, we'll look to the minutes. So the minutes are on page 11. I'll look to move the minutes, seconded by Councillor Dennison. We'll look to move the minutes, and I don't think there's any changes to the minutes, so we'll look to vote on the minutes. All those in favour? Thank you, that's passed. Okay, we'll move to the next item, which is item number, it's item number 8, and that is on page 15. Thank you, Julie. Thank you for representing us today. So I'll hand over to you.
Kia ora koutou, can you hear me okay? So I'd like to recommend that this report is received, including the Palmerston North Economic Monitor to the end of June 2021 and the overview of the economic contribution of events to the Manawatu region. There's lots of detail in this report, as you're aware, and I'm not going to make a presentation. I would note, though, that there's some additional information now available from the Infrastructure Commission on per capita spending on construction in the region. The value of Manawatu-Whanganui region construction is $3.1 billion, which still excludes some projects that we know are in the pipeline. This estimation puts our region third in terms of per capita expenditure after the Auckland region and Otago. If there are any particular questions, I'm happy to note those and come back with complete answers. Alternatively, councillors are welcome to send those through by email. I'd also note that the corresponding regional report was presented last week to the joint strategic planning meeting, and the recording of that presentation is available through the MDC website.
Thank you, Julie. Does anybody have anything they want to raise as a question in the meantime? No? Well, we'll look to move the report. Moved by Councillor Dennison and seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Okay, does anybody like to make a comment on the report? No? We'll just go to vote on the report. All those in favour of the report? That's unanimous. Okay, we'll move to the next item, which is item number 9. Thanks, Julie.
Kia ora again. The purpose of the profiles,
Don't
as
think
you
we
know,
can hear
is-
you quite, Julie.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, that's better.
Okay. The purpose of these profiles is to provide a picture of the economic contribution and potential of each of the main sectors to the regional economy, and the region is Palmerston North and Manawatu District. I'm happy to recommend this profile to you for your information, but would also make a couple of notes. The first is that estimating the economic benefit of the research and development sector to the region is difficult because the national survey done by Statistics New Zealand doesn't include a regional analysis. I believe the last analysis available, as noted in the report, is from the early 2000s. Employment data, this is the second issue, classifies all activities and provides some problems. For example, Massey University's primary activity is education, and so staff are classified in the higher education category. So to address those issues, the profile provides some analysis and estimates based on Stats New Zealand surveys, employee counts, and information provided by the institutions themselves. In summary, the profile shows that the sector makes up 3.9% of employment in our region, 3.4% or 222 million of regional GDP. Lastly, I'd also note that the appended profile is not the most recent proof, a bit of a lockdown consequence, and so there are a few minor edits to come. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Julie. When do you think the minor edits will be coming through?
Oh, there is a more recent proof. We just publish those to the website when they're done. This is just an information report to this committee, so it's not for your approval anyway.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further questions? Yep, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Julie, for giving us the overview of this. A couple of questions just around, I guess you touched on some of the challenges around getting data, but it seemed that some of the even potentially locally sourced data out of the Crown Research Institutes and out of Massey were quite old. It was sort of 2004 data from recollection, and just wondered, you know, as PNCC, were we reaching out to the CRIs and we didn't get information back, or did we not reach out? Like, how did we end up with a 2021 report that's got 2004 data from the CRIs in it?
Right, so that is the national survey that I mentioned. That's the reason I mentioned it. So in those, we are in touch with each of those CRIs and all the other institutions, which is why the information that they have provided is as up to date as possible. A lot of the other data is the completed 2020 year. The national survey I referred to was the regional summary of contribution in the sector was only done in that 2006 report. I think it's 2004 data. So I've had a wee chat to Peter about how we might describe that better. I think there was perhaps a better description in an earlier draft about the scene setting, or perhaps omit it. I guess that is the most recent reliable picture in terms of the regional analysis. All the rest of the data that is relying on 2020, 2021 data is kind of a sum of the parts, which is what I tried to explain. Sorry if I didn't do that very well.
No, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. So just so I can understand then, is this sort of a desktop exercise then, or is there actual engagement with the R&D entities locally to sort of build it from the bottom up, or is it sort of just a desktop scan?
So as I said in the notes, there are several sources of information. Some of it is the nationally collected data by such agencies as Statistics New Zealand and the employee data, and some of it is primary research done by the City Council staff in contacting all those agencies. So yes, they provide their own information for us to analyse.
Thank you. Further, just to understand, in some cases in other localities, including some internationally, quite often these profiles will have information about things like intellectual property portfolios and you know, how those are expanding or changing over time, and things like number of startups and innovation-based companies. I didn't really see sort of anything around intellectual property or its valuing here at a regional scale. Was there efforts made to find that sort of information? Is that sort of information available to us?
I guess I go back perhaps to the primary purpose of these profiles, which at the moment we're able to produce them at the rate they are being produced, because what they are is an economic contribution profile based on the data. So if they were to become a wider examination of employee sectors or different parts of each sector, then we would need to look again at resourcing. I think what you're talking about is potentially expanding the purpose of the profiles at the moment.
All right, thanks for those answers, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Julie. There doesn't appear to be any further questions. Nothing online? No? Okay, thank you for that. We'll look to move the recommendation, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dennison. Thanks, Trish. Okay, any comments? Councillor Barrett.
Just briefly, Madam Chair, and noting it's a sector that I have had some involvement with over 2 decades now. But really, I guess, it may be on us as council to think about what we're trying to achieve with these and how we resource them, but I am struck by the fact that we are labeling something 2021 and relying on data that's nearly 2 decades old. And we're talking about, a chance to position this community in this region, or to help position this community in this region globally around research, science, and innovation. If we're going to do that, we need to actually get a hold of things like what sort of startup rates do we have, what sort of intellectual property portfolios are we aggregating at a city and regional level. And I think until we start to tell that story, honestly, if I open this up, and with all respect, I mean, it looks beautiful, great pictures, says 2021 on the cover, but I'm concerned that if we're really serious about, drawing innovators to the region, if we're really serious about drawing investment capital to the region, this is not helping, unfortunately. It is, people are going to open it and go, old data, a few anecdotes, where's the big picture? So I recognize that may as much be on us as council in terms of how we resource and mandate these, but I'm concerned that, we have something here that is a good effort for the scope of resource that was there, but probably doesn't actually do the job that we need doing as the city. I'll leave it there, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Barrett. Doesn't appear to be any further questions. We'll look to vote. Are you happy for it all to be together?
I'll take a division on it.
Okay, we'll look to a division. Thanks, Hannah.
Just get the recommendation on the screen for councillors who are online. So on the motion that's before you, Councillor Butt,
For.
Councillor Johnson,
For.
Councillor Naylor,
For.
thank you, Councillor Harveyton,
For.
Councillor Bowen,
For.
Councillor Dingwall,
For.
Councillor Beattie,
For.
Councillor Meehan,
For.
Councillor Hancock,
For.
Councillor Dennison,
For.
Councillor Petrinas,
For.
Mr Kaitiana,
For.
Councillor Barrett,
I'm against.
Councillor Finlay,
For.
Councillor McCallard,
For.
Deputy Mayor Rutherford.
For. So that is passed 15 votes with 1 against. So I don't know why that says 13. Thank you. So we'll move to the last item, which is the work schedule, which is on page... Oh God, I need glasses. 87. 87? 80, 87. Okay, so I'll hand over to you, General Manager.
The only comment I would make is I note the retail sector profile was listed for the September committee. The dates for the profiles are somewhat indicative in that it's subject to availability of resource and data. So there is really good progress being made on the retail sector profile. There was just a slight hold up with some of the data coming out of the Manawatu district, so the district council was a little bit slower moving over to some new data we were capturing for retail. So there has been good progress on that, and it will be with the committee in the near future.
Thank you, David. Is there any questions from anybody on the work schedule? I see no hands up online. Any hands up in the room? No, that's lovely and simple. I'll look to move the work schedule, seconded by Councillor Dennison. We'll look to vote. All those in favour? Right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for a great meeting, and we'll look to see you in 3 months' time. Thanks, everyone.
So just to let councillors know, it's now 3 o'clock. Let's go with 3:15 for a restart. That's a 15-minute recess. 3:15 will restart environmental sustainability.
Councillors online, if you could please join the other team's meeting, because that's how we'll be recording the meeting.